All right, Doctor, let's just have some fun. It is big finish time once again, and I'm going to kind of pick up on something that I addressed, I don't know how far back, because I'm recording this in advance at the time that I have finished listening to these things, and I don't know how far down the line I'm going to punt this. Could be a couple of months, could be a lot longer. Don't know. It's in the can regardless now, so who knows? People of the future. So I'm going to talk about the episodes from the Fourth Doctor Adventures second season in Big Finish that I didn't already cover, because in an earlier video, I'll drop a link up there, I talked about the four that sort of form a continuous story dealing with the villain of Cuthbert, played by David Warner. And that made up 4 out of the 7 of these stories. And so I now need to talk about the other 3. And these are all completely self-contained standalone stories. So they're completely locked off. And there isn't really a thematic through line in this case, but they're also on the shorter side. These are only about an hour a pop, whereas like say the main range ones that I had been dealing with mostly up to this point, usually more in the range of 2 hours or close to it. So I didn't feel like I could get a full episode out of each one of these individually, so I'm just going to lump them together. So first up, also mentioned all of these, and the reason I got into them was because of it marked the return of the late Mary Tamm as the original incarnation of Romana. So we have Tom Baker as the Fourth Doctor, we have Mary Tamm as Romana, we also have K9, who is not fully utilized in all of these stories. He's kind of out of commission for some of them, or at least one of them. But he's still there, he's still around, he still works well. So this is all in grand scope of the Doctor Who timeline. Messed up thing that is. This all takes place following the end of the Key to Time season from Tom Baker's run, where that version of Romana first appeared. So they are theoretically on the run from the Black Guardian. That storyline doesn't really enter into things at all. It just kind of gets mentioned every now and then, basically to sort of place this timeline-wise. So first of these stories is called The Antimatter. And it is basically P.G. Wodehouse by way of Doctor Who. It is as if Doctor Who has dropped into sort of this comedy of manners with these, stuck-up, upper-class British people going, "Oh dear, my aunt has always been saying that it is definitely a time for me to find a lady who can take care of me, and she would so love to meet you." It's that kind of interaction and those kinds of characters, and it's actually just a lot of fun. That's it's a running thing with all 3 of these standalones. It's just fun settings and fun vibes that the Doctor and Romana get dropped into for each of these stories. So that's the general vibe of the Antimatter, and sort of what's going on here is you have I'm gonna say young gentleman. It's really tough to place his age based off strictly his voice, but somebody of marrying age in Victorian England era who as it opens, he is taking a young woman to meet his aunt to see if his aunt approves of him getting married to her. And, well, there's some weirdness going on with this aunt. And that young woman does not survive this weirdness. And then this young man, with a little bit of mind control and tinkering and suggestion going on from the aunt and her household staff, he then sets out again to find another young woman in his mind because, it's time that I got married, and, but not really kind of realizing that he's basically on the hunt on behalf of his aunt. And he then ends up encountering Romana, who is not dumb, because you would think, oh my god, she just goes with this guy to go meet this aunt. Or how stupid is she? She's not dumb. She's trying to embrace the era, which is something the Doctor recommend that she do. She doesn't feel threatened by this guy, so she's just like, well, why not? I'll just kind of jump in and experience this point in time, this point in Earth history. And meanwhile, the Doctor is kind of sort of tracking down his own stuff, and they don't actually cross paths for much. Actually, they almost don't cross paths at all, which makes it kind of funny, especially towards the end when things are wrapping up, because both the Doctor and Romana get embroiled in what's going on, and they're both at the same manor house, but never in the same location and never encountering the same other characters at the same time, which means they both have their own half of this adventure and they both impact how it ends, but they don't realize the other one was there, so they both think they had a completely solo adventure that the other one missed out on. It's actually kind of cute and adorable, and again, works very well with that sort of more farcical, sort of comedy of manners kind of style. So it's a sort of thing that I might have felt was contrived, but since that is the vibe of the episode of this story overall, I think it's kind of fitting. Like, it's goofy. I would call this one probably the most disposable of the three I'm going to talk about today. So, but it's still fun, especially if you have any kind of enjoyment for that style of comedy, which if you have an inherent dislike for that style of comedy, you may find it grating. I didn't. I'm not a huge fan of that kind of stuff, but I appreciate it when it's done well, and I think it is here. The next one up, that is The Justice of Jalzar. Jalzar. I can't remember how they said it. This one. This is another period piece. And this one actually includes some characters from classic era Doctor Who, an episode that story I haven't actually seen yet, but recurring from the classic Tom Baker era story, The Talons of Wang Chiang, we have Professor Lightfoot and his associate Henry Gordon Jago. Now, again, as I said, I have not seen Talons of Wang Chiang yet, and I also know that these guys have appeared in Big Finish before. They were popular enough to get their own spin-off thing. I hadn't heard any of that before, so this is actually my very first time encountering these characters. And despite the fact that I did feel a little bit like I was missing a couple of components because there is some reference to the fact, the Doctor encounters them and already knows them, they still absolutely work for me. These guys are adorable. They're a little bit Holmes and Watson, but just a little less sort of stuffy. A little more light and fun than you usually get when you do Holmes and Watson straight, and they're quite an interesting pair, and they kind of split off again. Actually, for a really big chunk of this entire second season of Fourth Doctor Adventures, the Doctor and Romana are separated. In this case, Romana goes off with Jago, and the Doctor is mostly with Lightfoot. So, plot-wise, the Doctor and Romana are here tracing after, something that they encountered in their travels, going, ooh, that's dangerous. We should find out what that was. And so it crashes, and they try and land. They're figuring stuff out, and what they find out is, in the area at the moment, there is currently a pair of things going on, and both of which started up about a month ago. There is a vigilante in the street known as the Pugilist who has been beating up street thugs and criminals. And there has also been a series of bodies showing up in the morgue that look like they were cooked. They are both, burned and charred and just kind of steamed all the way through. So that's the sort of setup of what's going on, and this kind of story, it really works great in this setting, in this time frame, and it does have that feel of one of the more rollicking kind of Sherlock Holmes style adventures. And the supporting cast is solid. A lot of Cockney voices in this, which I like. I like the Cockney accent. I like how it sounds. And so because we're dealing with sort of the more street level criminal element a fair amount of time, we get a fair number of those kinds of voices, which I always just enjoy. I don't know why, I just do. So, there's some accents just sound good to you. So I really did enjoy that. And like I said, this one really does come down to the characters. And it's just a lot of fun listening to these people work it out. Because the Doctor doesn't have all the answers, and he's sort of bouncing off of Lightfoot a little bit. And then Jago, who's very much out of his depth, but still, trying to be a little bit dashing and courageous around Romana, and he has this wonderful, exasperation when things go wrong. Oh, crumbs! It's kind of adorable and really lovable. K9 isn't really in this one, really at all. This is the one he's kind of out of commission for because he was badly damaged in the previous story, not the Antimatter, but the Sands of Life and War with the Lawn. But I talked about those in that earlier video. So it works well. It does a good job of through audio getting you into that sort of the foggy streets of London in the Victorian era vibe, and that's a setting I always enjoy. I have an inherent enjoyment in that setting, and that's sort of true of all three of these that I'm talking about. But my favorite one of these three, though, it's the third one. It's called Phantoms of the Deep. And the thing is, Doctor Who doesn't actually do underwater stuff all that often. I would suspect at least a part of that has to do with how awful the fifth Doctor episode Warriors of the Deep was, and how much that actually long-term damaged the show. And potentially, depending on how you want to look at it, may have ultimately led to some of the forces that wanted the show to end and be canceled, which took a little while to play out. But yeah, so I have a feeling like there's a certain sense of we just like underwater stuff's a bad idea for us. We just don't want to tackle that, which is a shame because it's a wonderfully moody setting. So most of this is taking place. This one's actually a slight future setting, and we're dealing with a submarine that is exploring a deep sea trench. And there is some stuff down there that you wouldn't expect. And what I love about this one's actually, I would actually call this one scary. Through the use of atmosphere, primarily. It does a really good job at having you feel confined within this submarine, and the sense of isolation and of the danger of just, where the characters are is very palpable. And it also does a really good job of stretching out how long we know what the threat is. And I don't mean how long before they reveal that ultimately it's aliens, because it's Doctor Who, so it's always aliens. But I mean how long before we even really know that there is a definitive threat beyond just the environment we're in. And you would think that would mean that it's dull and it doesn't get going for a while, but it actually does, because that sense of atmosphere and that sense of anything that is even slightly off is an indication of potentially huge danger. That's there almost from the beginning. So long before we start encountering the titular, phantoms, which some characters see and some don't, long before anybody encounters any of that, it still has a sense of danger about it, and isolation and claustrophobia, as well as an audio medium can exhibit those kinds of qualities. And it's done really, really well, and it's paced really well for what it is too. And it's funny, I mentioned that these are shorter. These are only about an hour a piece, and I think that actually can work very well for isolated standalone stories, because I do think that definitely the latter two of these that I'm talking about are stronger than either one of the larger scale stories that I talked about last time were from this same season. The Antimatter is a little bit more light and fluffy, so I'm not sure I would say that one is better than, say, the Dalek Contract in the final phase, but I do feel that these other two are. Because you can have something be a one-off, and you can have it be midnight. Basically, not to imply that Phantoms of the Deep is quite on the level of something like Midnight, but it's kind of going for that kind of vibe. It's like, look, we're dealing with weirdness. They just got to survive this. This is not part of a bigger thing. We just got to get out of this situation. And it captures all that really, really, really well. K9's back online for this one, and he's used quite effectively in this. and the supporting cast, which is the crew of the submarine, plus another character who I don't really want to talk too much about because that's kind of getting into a little bit of spoilers about what they encountered down there. But it's really well done. I was impressed how well it managed to capture through audio only the sense of atmosphere of a creepy, ghostly, dark underwater setting. I was really impressed with this one. So overall, all three of these are good. I take enjoyment out of all of them. With the exception of Phantoms of the Deep, I'm not sure any of them will leave the impact of like the best of Big Finish that I've heard so far. I'm not sure there's something that I would be like, oh yeah, if you listen to Big Finish, you got to be sure you do those. But they are ones that I would still recommend, possibly even like as little starting samples things. Like they're not as intimidating as some of the main range stuff, which is more the neighborhood of 2 hours and usually a lot more involved story-wise. These are a little bit more like little samples, little tasters, but they're still really well done. So these 3 episodes of Big Finish, have you heard any of them? Have you heard any other Big Finish ones you want to recommend that are more sort of these short, snackier, bite-sized kind of things? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Whole bunch of stuff you can do because there's buttons and there's links, including one to my Patreon if you feel like supporting me that way. If you don't worry about it. Other links you can check out. Don't want to click on them? Don't even worry about that either because you know what? End of the day, folks, you're the council. I just run the meetings. And until next time, this council is adjourned.